So hello, everybody. I don't like to sit, but I will sit so the camera can get me. I'm sorry for the people behind. I don't see you there, but it will be okay. Yeah, I teach at Tel Aviv University, and we do have Korean studies. So I also teach a similar class to Barbara's, and it's very nice to be here and meet you. I wish I could have my student here, Barbara, next time, but your book. Is it? So. So today we'll talk about the book that came out last summer, Contemporary Korean Shamanism from Ritual to Digital. Have any of you participated in a Korean shamanic ritual ever? No? I didn't when I was your age. I didn't think I will, but I will show you a bit before we begin. We'll do a warm-up, right? Because it's so cold. So prepare, gear yourself. It will be 1 minute maybe, but it's a bit noisy. Imagine that normally it would be like 3 days to 7 days, like many hours. But now usually the ritual you'll observe was 1 day. Some rituals can be 2 days. I've been this summer, I was in a ritual that started the afternoon and finished like 1 o'clock the next day, but we slept like 4 hours in between. So the rituals can be long and noisy and very special. And that's my research. I'm an anthropologist and folklorist, and I've been meeting shamans since 2005, whenever I can. So let's see a little bit, just to get ready for that, right? Oh. No, down. Oh, yeah. So yes, this happens many times. Basically, every day, if you go to the right place, and maybe you notice that it's kind of a mountain shrine, so it's near Seoul. This specific one, I had to take a taxi from the subway station, the nearest subway station, for like 10 minutes to the hills. But in some cases, it's actually walking distance from the train or bus or subway station. It cannot be in the city because it's very noisy and they play the music at night, but it is a very, very live tradition. So my book is all about that. How come this tradition is so alive? What do people do? And so we'll begin like by these issues. First, we'll talk about what is Korean shamanism, what happens. Then I'll discuss a little bit why I think it's important to study, or what I think we get from learning about it. It's nice, but not just that. There'll be a few other reasons. And then we'll talk about how I performed the research. And then I'll talk a little bit about the chapters of the book. So it will be very dense. And I'll try to put it all in these 45 or 40 minutes that we have left. And then you'll have probably many questions. So I must say, first thing, that the book is not about Korean shamanism per se. So I'm writing a book now that's more about the belief system and practical aspects. What do they do? Why was there a pig there? Why is the pig on his back? I mention it in the book, but not that much. The book is about contemporary Korean shamanism from the ritual to the digital. So I'm actually exploring how the people communicate with the gods and the spirits. Yeah, well, later it won't bother. But they do it to divine the future, and they become possessed by the spirits and the gods. So this is something we have to know. It's not the whole book, but that's the basic thing. But what's interesting to me is that Korea is so hyper modern, it's so technologically saturated culture, and still shamans are not diminishing in numbers. So when I started in the early 2000s, people were saying, oh, it's dying out, Seoul is a big city, there won't be any shaman. Guess what? It's 22 years and there's even more shamans. So I'm asking myself, why? How can this be? And that's what I'm asking. That's the main thing that I'm trying to understand. So when I look at this book, I'm noticing a few things that happened that help manage shamanism in contemporary Korea. One thing is that shamanism used to be very embarrassing. Like, people would not say they're going to a shaman, or people would not say they're they have in their family somebody who became mudang or shaman. We can use the word mudang. It's now, if you watch television or films about mudang, they'll use the word mudang. But for example, in the past, when I started, to say mudang was a bit embarrassing. So people used other name like posal name, posal bodhisattva, if you know the name, or they say manchin, which means 10,000 spirits, shin. So they would say manchin or posal name, so they don't have to say the word mudang. It was so embarrassing. But now when I go to the shamans, they call themselves mudang. It's not embarrassing anymore. They have websites that say mudang. They discuss about themselves and others as mudang. So there's a change in the attitude. Maybe Korea is a little bit pluralizing. Doesn't mean the Christians like mudang. Christians don't really like the mudang, but they live together. They don't have a way to diminish it. And also the way that ordinary people know mudang, if they haven't been to ritual, not every Korean has been to shamanic ritual in contemporary Seoul. Maybe when they lived in a village and there was a ritual a few times every year, everybody would hear and they would go and see what's happening. I meet old people, they say, oh, when I was young, whenever I hear the drum beat, you know, this two-side drum, the hourglass drum. So I would go and see, so I saw shaman dancing. That's the old people. But young people in Seoul, they have to go to these mountains, right? So not everybody's seeing a ritual in life, but they see them. Where do they see them? In the museum. When the class is going to visit folklore museum, there is a place that discusses Korean shamanism. Then when they watch films, I don't know if anybody has watched the film in English, they called it Wailing. You should watch. It had a shaman there, right? There are many films with shamans now. So people watch films and see shaman. They don't want to see shaman. They want to see the film. It's a thriller, but it has a shaman in it. So if you're Korean and you watch many Korean films, then you see them. Then you watch television programs like a New Year reality show. Suddenly a shaman comes and tells the future for people, for celebrities, for BTS idols. So everybody's kind of watching shamans on the screen. And that's the topic of the book, basically. So the book, what is the book about? About how shamans are represented in Korea beyond ritual. So it starts from ritual, the book, and then it goes all the way through other forms of representation. Where people meet shamans, they mostly meet them on their computer screen, on their phone, on their television screen, right? So why do I think we can explore that? Why am I interested? Because I think there is a vernacular religion. Vernacular means local, small, folklore. And that's like shamanism used to be. And now suddenly it's going hyper modern. It's in Seoul. It's in like Samsung buildings. And sometimes it's in the buildings. So sometimes when a big building or a mall opens, if the people are not Christian, then they can bring a shaman and it's a big party with music and everybody's happy and coming. And then it would be maybe 1 hour to bless the place. So it can be also even in Samsung buildings, I've seen short versions. You won't see the pig in these versions. It's more like, sometimes, but usually it's more like artistic. But the dance, the music, the song, the blessing, they'll do that. But when you ask the shaman, so you did 1 hour in the Samsung building, did you get possessed? Yes. So for the shamans, for the mudang, even if they perform in a very modern place, in a museum, in a theater hall, in the National Symphonic Orchestra concert, one of the shaman I work with, she was invited to sing with the orchestra. But for them, they can get possessed. They do it for the spirits. So they don't do it just for fun, even if they're on television. So it works together. They feel, when I interview them, they say, we are still doing it for the same reason. If there are gods and spirit of ancestor and there's television, they want to be on television. They want to be on television. Because in the beginning, I was thinking, well, maybe the gods are not happy about it. Maybe they don't want to be on television, no? The gods want to be on television. The spirits want to be spoken to. They want many people to hear them. And when Buddha speak about the spirit, they speak about the people that are around us. Of course, they know there's television. In the beginning, I was asking them, so how come I read in the book that it's 3 days performance and you're doing 1 hour? So the gods are not angry? And they said, no, the God knows, you know, it's a theater. Nobody will stay the whole day. Like the spirits know, they are there. For them, they live within, they know exactly what's happening. And then, of course, they want to be online and everywhere. So there is no contradiction. And that's for me, as an Israeli or a foreigner coming to Korea, I have to learn to understand the way they see things. And also Mudang are not everybody's everyday Korean. Not all Koreans really think that, but many Koreans do. So if you go to Korea, or if I go and I'm studying shamanism, oh yeah, my grandmother used to go to shaman. So mostly they won't say we know. But after we get to know each other, or after they drink a little bit soju, so suddenly you hear, and mostly so many people have met Mudang, young people even, because they go for the new year. Sometimes they go to get like advice, what to do. Is it a good year to buy a house? Is it a good year to move outside from Seoul? So even younger people do. I met a guy, I want to marry him, but not sure about him. Can you, ask my ancestors what they think? Many people do it. And it doesn't believe they're 100% believers. So in shamanism, you don't have to really believe. You can go for fun and then you decide you want to take the advice or not. And that's how it can work in contemporary world. In fast, people don't have time to go 3 days. So some shamans do ritual for 3 days, but they put it live on camera. So people can kind of in the evening when they go home, they see what happened in the ritual. They paid for the ritual, but they don't have time to go for 3 days. All this happened. So that's why the screen culture became part of my research. I didn't think so. I was like, oh, shamans, very old fashioned. There won't be any shamans 10 years from now. When I was 20 something, I thought, wow, I'm going to learn what they're doing because there are not going to be any shamans anymore. No, this didn't happen, but I'm happy. I'm glad it's better. I can see them now too. I thought that in 10 years, there won't be any shaman. That's what people were saying in Korea. How can there be shaman 10 years from now and technology? Wow. So that's the book. That's what is the book about. Okay. Where do they practice? Where do people see them? How do Koreans know about shaman? Then how do I do my research? I began as an ethnographer, meeting people, interviewing, going to rituals. I really like to be in shamanic rituals. I don't get bored. Some people get bored. I took many people that were interested, other scholars, and usually after an hour or two, it's like, even if you speak Korean, sometimes it's like something people don't really connect, some terminology, different terminology, old language. Sometimes if I sit with Korean friends to look at videos and kind of write the words and transcribe. So many words, I don't know everything because my Korean is not perfect, but I know the terminology. But ordinary Koreans don't know the terminology, the old words. And so it's not very interesting to people to stay there for 12 hours, very noisy too. But I'm lucky because I really like it. I don't think you can do ethnography for many hours if you don't like what you do. Some people can be ethnographers of people they don't like criminals, maybe. Very difficult. So I'm lucky. I like the shamanic ritual. It's fun for me. I don't get bored. I can stay late at night. Usually at night, it's the most interesting thing that happens. Because if they stay until very late, it means something is wrong with the ritual and they have to continue until the spirits and gods are happy. The purpose is to make spirits, ancestor spirits, gods of nature, to make them happy and help the people that made the ritual for them. And if they're not happy for some reason, like in the summer, there was a grandmother that was killed and they didn't know, she was maybe murdered. And some people say that she committed suicide. So she was very upset. She was dead, right? But she came into the body of the Manchin. The Manchin was speaking for her. And she was saying, I'm very upset. You think I committed suicide, but I was actually murdered. It took a long time until like 1 o'clock at night until she was like, okay, you believe me and I'm going to the world of the dead. I'm going to leave you in peace. I think most Koreans are afraid of when the dead are around them. If you've watched Korean television dramas like 49 Days, there are several dramas that discuss the spirits of the dead that are around the people they love. They don't want to go. They miss their grandchildren, or somebody died very young, a child. They don't want to go. They miss their parents, and it's very dangerous for the living people. So most people would agree that if there are dead people in the family that are not resolved, their death is not resolved, violent death, that many people would hold shamanic ritual because they don't like the spirits to stay. Spirits need to go to the world. So that's when it gets interesting at night. I like to do ethnography. When I came to Korea, I thought I'm going to live in some small village where shamans still existed. I did a pre-dissertation field trip in the summer to decide where I'm going to live for the whole year. And I went to villages, and everywhere there were a few shamans. And I would go to shaman stores, the shops where they sell all the bells and flags and things, because they know the shamans, right? So when I go to a small place, small town like Gyeongju, let's say, so in the shops they say, but if you want to study good shamans, you go to Seoul. I mean, the people who stayed here are just not a very good shaman. If they're very famous, they go to Seoul, or at least they have an office in Seoul. Many shamans have a hometown village shrine, like where their ancestors are, but they also have an office in Seoul. So I began doing urban ethnography, and I lived in Seoul. I didn't live in a small village, because in Seoul I could meet so many shamans. I could go to a ritual every day. I could go to interview them every day, even if they live in the countryside, because usually weekdays they come to offices in Seoul to meet people. So it was much easier. So I became an urban ethnographer, which is what many anthropologists do. You know, there are not so many villages. And also in Korea, everything is very close. You can always take a train for 4 hours and get almost everywhere. So I participate, I interview. I don't only go to rituals, I go also a lot to, I like ritual preparation. That's the best part I like, where they go shopping for everything, where they prepare the flowers. And so that's very interesting for me. And also after the ritual, what they do with the things, how they finish the ritual, how they go back to normal life, the people that had rituals. And then I interview during the ritual. Sometimes I have a meeting outside rituals, so we can discuss more seriously a question that I will not ask the shaman when she's performing on and off. Usually it's not one shaman. It will be a shaman that is kind of more experienced with her students or apprentices, like she would be Shin Omani, you know, a little bit Korean, right? So she would be the spirit mother, and she would have Shin Adel, Shin Tal, Shin Adel, and they would be performing with her. So she will do the hard part, like the shaman, you saw the men. I'm saying that she, because most of them are women, like 80%, but the men that you've seen in the video, Yi Sung Jae, so he has many apprentices, daughters and sons, but he did the part with the pork. And actually, I don't know if you noticed, he was standing on a knife. When he was going up, he was standing on top of a knife, barefoot. It's part of the ritual. So he did that, but the apprentices did other parts. So he's dancing 12 hours, like he's doing 2 hours and he takes a rest, one of the students does. So there's many people to interview, and there's also the apprentices and the shop owners and the people in the museum, and so many people that do internet websites for shamans. Very interesting to talk to them, because they're not shamans. They're like tech people, high-tech people. They're doing websites for shamans. That was very interesting interviews. I analyzed the material culture, the objects. I was very interested in the object, the statues, how the gods are depicted. You'll see in the video, there's many gods painting, not in the one we've seen that was outside, but when you see videos from inside, many gods are painted. So I'm very interested in that. And also I do media analysis, because in the book, as you will see, there are chapters about films and television. So I do all kinds of methodologies too. That's the how. So, well, there are, let's stop for a few conclusions, okay, before we go into the chapter. I discovered there are many agencies, many people that work together that have agency. It would mean they have power, they initiate actions. In many research that you read about shamans in Korea and in the world, shamans are not agents. They are like tools, like vehicles for the spirits. The spirits go into their body, the spirits and gods do whatever they want. In the Korean case, I felt that the shaman have a lot of agency. In the ritual, for example, when the spirit doesn't want to go, of course, she doesn't want to go, she's the grandmother, whatever, but eventually they convince her to go. So they have a lot of power on the spirits. Sometimes they invite other spirits to help them. For example, the grandmother doesn't want to go, so the main shaman, and the grandmother, let's say, is in the body of her daughter, the client, the person who came to exorcise the spirit of the grandmother. So then the head shaman can invite into her body the spirit of Changun, for example, a general, and she said, Changunim, help me to convince the grandmother to go. So they have a lot of power. The spirit possesses them, right? But if they're good shaman, experienced shamans, they can control how, when to be possessed, when not. And the apprentices, they don't always control the spirit so well. So they have to learn from the experienced shaman. The other agency that the shamans have, and is a lot of my research is about it, is their image, how their social image is created, how they are depicted when they come to television. What do they do in television? Usually when I've seen shaman in talk shows, in television. Then in Korea, many times they interview the audience, right? There is talk show and somebody on the stage, and then they ask the audience questions. And many times the audience said, we never thought that a shaman would be a normal person. So she's speaking. One of the shaman I work with, she used to be a model, a fashion model, Pang Un Mi. You can look her up in Facebook, Pang Un Mi. And she has a Facebook and website, and she speaks English a little bit, so you can communicate easily. And when she goes on television, people knew that she was a model in the 90s. And then she does shamanism, and people say, oh, we didn't think that normal people can be shamans. So they see them on television, and the shamans can decide how to appear, right? They can come like very crazy and do this kind of stuff, but usually they come very composed and dressed nicely, and they project an image of professionals and not of this crazy Michin and Michin Taram, like people thought that shamans were crazy. So that's the shaman. Then you have official institutions. Many institutions in Korea decide about the image of shamans. For example, the government has a project, they call it Munhwaje, like the people who are cultural treasures of the country, and they choose some shamans from the 80s. They started choosing some very experienced shamans and giving them funding, like stipend, like fellowship, to perform shamanism. And also then the shaman chooses one or two of their best apprentices to be the continuing of the line, because shamans have a line that is not family line, but it's a student and teacher line. So they can choose the best student. It's also political, and there's a lot of competition between the apprentice who's going to get the title. Because then when the shaman dies, when the mudang dies, then the senior student should take over. 3 years ago, Kim Kum-hwa, the most famous Korean shaman, like national shaman, passed away, and there is still kind of a struggle among her students who's gonna get, and it's also money, it's also houses, it's also shrines. Many mudang don't have children. She didn't have children of her own, so only her spirit children, only her shidadal and one of her nieces and nephews fight over the spiritual and physical inheritance. So there are institutions involved. It's, lawyers, everybody, and the government, of course. Some of the institutions I study are museums. I think a lot of the image of shamans is created through museums, so that's very interesting to learn how. And then you have the entertainment industry. They don't bring shamans to talk shows because they want to keep Korean heritage. That's what the government does. But then they bring shamans to talk shows because it's rating. People want to see shaman divine the future. People want to see famous people like this model who became shaman. It's interesting. And it makes money. So that's the entertainment business. And that's interesting too, because they affect a lot of the image. Not negatively necessarily. In the early 2000, like 2005, I started watching television with shamans. Usually they would laugh at them. Like they would bring a shaman and put all these pop-ups, the Korean television with all these kind of slogans, jumping and a rotten fish and whatever. It was kind of humiliating. The shamans did go because it's like for them, they get more clients if they go to television, but it wasn't very nice for me to watch. It seemed that the interviewer was always laughing at them, and it was changing gradually. And now you can see shamans sitting like that. There's a shaman, there's a psychologist, and there is a makeup artist, and there would be a woman, and everybody's giving her advice how she should change her life. So the psychologist said something, and the shaman says something about the ancestor, and then the person who's makeup artist tell her, oh, if you do that, your nose will look better. And they all sit like very professionally. It's also funny. For me, it's very nice to watch because they really became like professionals on television. Not always, but much more than it used to be. Well, that's a changing image in the media, and that's not government sponsored. That's the way the media works. So the media has agency too, if they want people to watch shaman as crazy people or not crazy people. They also edit. The shaman can be very nice, and then they can edit it that you'll look like crazy person. But recently they don't. So I really like to watch shamans in talk shows now, and they like it too, of course. Then the public, if the public wouldn't want to go to shamans in Korea, then there wouldn't be shamans, right? Most of them make a living by paying customers. A ritual of a full day is very expensive. It can be 20,000 euros, 40,000 euros for one day ritual. Because there are musicians, there are shamans, there are apprentices, there's a lot of food, pork. You know how much a big pig costs? You know how much a full cow costs in Korea? Sometimes they have a full cow, not just a pig. Sometimes they have 5 pigs. Depends what ritual, what the spirits want, what the shaman wants, who's taking photographs. Some rituals are big because the media is involved, some kind of media, and they want to bring a lot of animals. It's very expensive. So people pay for that, and that's the public. And the public wouldn't be interested, there wouldn't be Korean shamanism now. You see in other countries where the public lost interest and you have less shamans. In Japan, there are Miko, similar to shamans, but there are very few. I started with Japanese studies. I wanted to study Japanese Miko, but in Korea, it's so much more alive than in Japan. And the Japanese government gives stipends to Miko, to Japanese shamans. So the public is very crucial here. If you have 200,000 shamans and actually 300,000 registered, they have official organization, shamanism organization. So it means that they have clients. But most of them, when they become mudang, they cannot continue to work normally because suddenly the spirits tell them, we want you to go to the mountain. They go to the mountain for a few days. Many of my meetings are canceled because they send me a text, oh, I'm going to the mountain, 3 days, I'll be back, let's reschedule. They do that. So it's very hard for them to maintain a stable work. And then a client comes with a big problem. They keep their phones open 24/7. That's what they say in the website and promotion, 24/7 phone calls. Like somebody woke up at night from a dream. Something very scary happened in a dream. He died in the dream. They can call a shaman, discuss it with them at night. So it's very difficult to keep a schedule for a different business. And most of them do shamanism, their main occupation, at least the ones that are registered. And some people become shaman that they don't practice, so they have maybe a box at home, like secretly under the bed. I didn't study these people so much, but I meet them in the shops when I go to shaman stores because they buy the shaman artifact, but they don't perform for public, so it's not the part of my own study. So yeah, the paying public, I should say, not just the public, but also the public that watches and searches. I mean, if people don't want to see shamans on television, there wouldn't be shamans on television. That's the side of the public too, right? That's ratings. So the public is very crucial here. And in Korea, let's not forget, almost 30% are Christians. What does that mean? It's another question I won't have time to discuss today. Do they go? Some of them go shaman secretly. And technology, of course, if there wasn't internet, if there wasn't streaming, if we didn't have Netflix, we couldn't have watched Minamdang. Anybody watch Minamdang Cafe? Now a new series, 2022 in television. It's not in my book. The book is from a year before. There is now on Netflix a series in Korea about shamans, Minamdang Cafe, if you want to watch. Okay, back to the book. I'm not opening for question now. I know you have, but we'll have like, right? Because we are not recording the question. So I have 5 chapters in the book, and we'll talk like maybe 5 minutes or less about each chapter, right? So goes on stage. The first chapter starts with ritual. You remember, because the title was from ritual to the digital. So first I'm discussing a ritual, but not a regular ritual. So if you haven't read anything about Korean shamanism, you can start with the first book that I read from 1985 by Professor Laurel Kendall of Columbia University. And the book is called Shamans, Housewives, and Other Restless Spirits. So she did her research in a village. That's why I thought I should go to a village, like, because I was reading her book and I admired it a lot. So her book starts with a chapter about the ritual in a village. So if you want to read how rituals were done in the 70s, that would be probably the best description in English. But my ritual is in the 20,000. So I write about the ritual on the stage. So I visited many stage rituals, but that one that I discussed in a very detailed fashion in that chapter is a ritual in the first folk traditions festivals that was held in Seoul in the World Cup Stadium. And there were many stages, and it was very interesting because on some stages there were like boy bands singing traditional folk songs, and there was even b-boys, because they said that's a new tradition and we want to explore. But there was also a shamanic shrine outside set, and the whole chapter is about one of the rituals. So every day they would have like a 3, 4, 5 hours ritual on the shamanic stage and other kind of performances on other stages. So that's the first chapter, and it discusses that ritual. So here you can see the ritual that I talk about. So that's the night, that's the ritual. Oh, that's a preparation. And here you can see the ritual itself, Manchin or Shama Mudang Sokyong-uk, very famous now. She was the main shaman in a short film called Night Fishing, Paramanjang. If you want to watch Night Fishing, It's like a 20-something horror mystery, and she features in that. She's the main shaman. So she's in the media too. And she performed an actual ritual. And I was interested in many things. For example, here, the preparation. Well, it's a whole chapter, so I won't give all the details. But for example, what you see, the pictures of the gods in the shrines of shaman, it's made on paper. And that's why they can burn it, and sometimes it's destroyed. But what she did, because she performed outside, and that's summer, and there is rain in Korea in the summer, so she actually went to a shop and she printed them on polyester. So what you see here is actually rolled into a very, very thin polyester sheet, and she can reuse it. And of course, it was 2007. I asked her, I didn't know then, and I said, oh, the gods are not upset that it's not on paper, because some shamans keep it on paper even when it's raining. They will put the plastic on the paper. Well, she didn't know. I discussed it with the god. It was fine. And everything is done with consultation, so they never will offend the god, you know. But when they do this and they change it to plastic, for me, it's very interesting, because in Korean scholarship, when you meet Korean folklore, like Min Sok-hak scholar, they would also emphasize how it's important to keep the tradition. And the tradition is painting on the paper. So many things happen when it goes on stage. It's short, it's on plastic. In this ritual, the offering, the food was real, like bananas was bananas, talk was talk, and everybody could eat it. After the ritual, they give it to people, and it's like blessed food. But I haven't seen it, but I did read in Keith Howard's book that he saw plastic fruit. I never seen plastic fruit in ritual. So maybe it changed, because I think he wrote about it in the early 2000s. I never seen plastic, but or maybe he works with different shamans, you know. Like some people would say, I never seen plastic painting, like I have. So every shaman discussed with their gods what to do. So that's very interesting for me. And the ritual was nice, but then there was rain, and then the sound system failed. And you know, she's here, and the people are a bit further. So it's not a village, everybody can come close. There were chairs. And so when there wasn't sound system, people couldn't hear her. Everybody was with umbrellas. She's dancing in the rain. It's not cold, it's summer in Korea, or September, was it? And then eventually they shortened the ritual even more because of the rain and the sound system. So everything can be accommodated. And that was very interesting for me. Also, I discussed in the book how the scholars, there's a scholar, Professor Yang Jun-sung, he is the one who chose the specific ritual, like he's a consultant of the festival, of the government basically, that pays for the festival. And he decided which shamans come, a lot of politics and money, of course. And then he also introduces, because not everybody in the audience knows what shamans should do. There weren't foreigners, but still Koreans don't always know about shamanism. So he was giving like little lectures, short lectures. So at some point she was getting ready to go on the knife. Everybody's very excited, and the drumming, and he wants to explain. Not everybody will notice with the rain that she's going on the knife. He doesn't want to miss the moment. So he tells her, can you wait a second? She's standing there. She's possessed now. And he's explaining on the microphone that she's going now to be on the knife. It's very important, Changnim, and the god that will come. So I was very interested in that, how the ritual becomes a stage event, and the scholars and government and the plastic, all this kind of thing was exactly what I wanted to learn. And that was 2007 when I began my dissertation fieldwork. And I've seen many rituals since of the same kind. That's the first chapter. Then the second chapter, I'm talking about film. So I look at how the image of shamans changed with the years. I'll show you a bit. Oh, before I show, I'll tell you about the 70s. In the 70s, shamans were mean, scary, bad people that want to destroy Korea. There's Park Chung-gi era, and he wants development, and he wants modernization. If you haven't gotten to that, Barbara, in your course, you remind them when you talk about Park Chung-gi. So it was dictatorship, and he was against shaman. He thought they were taking the country back. The country was very poor, and the shamans were the symbol of the poor country of all time. So he was like there was the new community, new village movement. The government was trying at that time to prevent shamans from performing. And the shamans in the films were like that. So for example, if you like older films, Yodo by Kim Ki-young, very, very famous film. The shaman is very mean, and there is an island, and they want to develop tourism. They want to develop commercial fishing, and she's against everything. And at some point, she tells her apprentice to have sexual intercourse with a corpse, with a dead man. very strange things shamans do in the 70s, like always bad and very spooky and like bad people. So it's only one example. I give a few in the books if you want to read, and if you want to watch the film, very psychological thriller like the Korean Hitchcock thing, and with a shaman, Iyo Island. So then you get to the 80s and it's about shamanism is dying and we have to kind of make documentaries about shaman. And then you get to the 2000s and then shamans are cute and funny and you don't have to be afraid. So I'm going to show you a thriller of a film called Paksu Kontal. It's the, Paksu is the male shaman. So it's the shaman gangster, or they called it in English, Man on Edge. It was, I think it's in the, like, definitely in the 100 most grossing entrance grossing film. How would you call that? Like the most popular film on theaters. But I think it came to some list in the 20. Like people went to the, remember the public that pays? People paid to go to see this shaman gangster. I'm showing you the thriller just so you can see how shamans are depicted now. That's 2015. So. Okay. That's his spirit mother. This is Shinomami. She's the one who is teaching.
할배를 그대로 빼다 박았네. 할배가 지금 네 머리 위를 쓰다듬고 계신다.
지금 밀양에서 농사 짓고 계신데요.
아따 속을 뻔했네. 할매가
Spanish with the subtitles, but that's not the, wait. First, I want to show you the thriller, I think. Yeah, that was a thriller, sorry. So that's kind of a divination session, actual divination session. Basically, I mean, it has humor if you get the language, but it's very similar to what I see when I go to see shamans. So it's not very different. If people watch that and then they'll go to shamanic divination, they won't be surprised. It will look the same, very similar. So I find many of the depictions are very similar, but let's see the gangster himself. I think that shouldn't.
내 요새 재수가 좀 없어요. 그러니까 굿 좀 합시다.
귀신이 보인다고. 신 내린대. 신 받아야 된다고.
무당.
네 운명은 무당해야 산다.
아니야, 나는 건달해도 잘 살아. 무당해! 안 들키면 되잖아!
참 인생 지랄 같지.
점에만 기다려서 허튼데서 얼굴도 못 보고 간 사람이 천지 백갈이다.
여기 어디라고 거짓말 시키고 있었다! 잘했어!
여보세요. 맞아, 왜 그래?
세상에. 그 오늘이 어떤 날인지 모르십니까?
형님,
화장하셨지?
마사지 받았다, 이 자식들아.
나는 조선의 군모다.
니가 어디 신모도 못하겠다니까 신하야.
희한하게 누구 좀 닮았네. 오늘 막 우리 도사님 홀딱 한번 삐끼볼까?
우리 조직에 미래와 운명을 맡겼던 그 거센 도사는 바로
Yeah, so that's the kind of shaman you can see now. I mean, gangster shaman. Also, you know, action comedies are very common in Korea. So the changing image, right? The scary shaman in the island, she's so bad, and suddenly 2015 is fun. And that's not the only one. I talk about several films in the chapter, but we'll have to move on, right? So the third chapter is about museums. So I talk about government museums. That's the National Folk Museum. Now they have a much better exhibit of shamanism. This year they changed it, but that stayed there for many years. I kind of criticized them because this exhibit was like in an alleyway. Like you walk in the main hall. If you've been in Folk Museum, everything is very big. But then you have a small alley that you have to go inside and see that. So the justification was the shamans have these small alleys to go to their home. But when I observed, many people just, you know, didn't go in. So I felt they were trying to marginalize. As the National Folk Museum, we don't want to talk a lot about the shamans because foreigners kind, you know, it's kind of weird. And also in the text that were on the side, it was described that like shamanism was part of our old culture. They didn't speak about it. It's something that happens now. And in the new exhibit this year, it changed. So my book is a little bit unfair in that, but this has been there like for more than 10 years this way. And here you can see Professor Young Johnson, the one that introduced the shaman on the stage. And I've been working with him for many years. He has his own museum. If you go to Seoul, go to the Museum of Shamanism. That's how we call it in Korean English. They don't call it Musokwanggwa, no, Museum of Shamanism. And he has a very big collection. He was one of the curators, the main curators of the big museum, National Folk Museum. And when he retired at 65, he opened his own museum in a real shrine for the ancestor that was saved from destruction. So there is a whole new town around. It's called New Town, around the shaman shrine, and there's a shaman shrine. So like it's a new neighborhood near Kupabal station. And if you go there, you'll see his collection displayed in the shrine that he managed to save. So it's kind of interesting. He's of course showing it differently. And also every year, once or twice, he has a big shamanic ritual where the actual shamans come and perform in the museum. So very nice project. It's in my book too. And then the fourth chapter, we talk about television representation, how shamans appear on television. So we talked a little bit about it. I'll show you just like 2 seconds from a drama. It was called Heaven's Fate. The interesting thing for me here, and I called it Getting to Know a Korean Shaman Through Television Representation, is the name of the chapter, is that people really get to know Korean shamans through these dramas. Because even for me, I didn't see so many initiation rituals. Because it has to be an apprentice that is initiated, right? I've seen maybe 6, I think, or 7, right? And I've seen many rituals. And suddenly somebody watches the drama and they can see initiation ritual right there without knowing them. And it's very similar to real life. So it's really getting to know what they do in a way that the client, even if they're clients, they go to shaman, they will not see initiation ritual because initiation ritual is private. It's the shaman that is getting initiated and her family. And suddenly here they can see it. So it was very interesting because people know so much about shamanism because of these dramas. Well, this was like a morning housewife dramas, 256 chapters, I think, about the life of the Mudang. You know, all the drama was about her life. Look it up. You have some, I think I took this one from YouTube. It's without translation, but sometimes they have.
노여움도 다 걷어가시고 잘못한 것도 다 걷어가시고 그저 우리에게 호를 날게 해주세요. 솟아뛰게 해주세요. 솟아뛰게 해주세요.
I will not make a teaser. There is a whole family issue, of course, like always in Korea. She doesn't know the mother, who the mother turns out to be her biological mother. And she discovers it when she becomes a shaman, of course, the protagonist. Because she begins like a very good student. She's in the university. She's a very good student. She's about to marry a very rich guy, Korean typical, you know, drama kind of thing. And then when she becomes possessed, his family doesn't accept her. So they have to break the engagement and she has to become a mudang. And then she discovers who her real mother is. So, you know, it's like a Korean drama, typical, but it's all around the shaman. So people that watch it really see, and you see here the mothers. It's not, I won't say teasers in case you want to watch 256. I didn't watch all the chapters, I must say. I watched the ones with the ritual. But the reason I started doing the research about the drama is that the shamans were showing them to me. So I would go to a mudang's house and they're like, come tomorrow because we're going to watch together, you know, the drama. So I'm sitting there and watching with them and they comment, oh, that's like real life. No, look what they did. No, that's wrong. And so it's very interesting. That's how I started thinking about doing this research. I'm an anthropologist. I don't do media research, but the shaman, they like it. And then they put it in their social media. Like when there is something very famous, they put and they discuss. So for example, the Minamdang Cafe, the one that's showing now is not portraying shamanism very nicely. Shamans think, because I won't tease you also, but he's a fake shaman, basically, the main character. He's not a real shaman. So when it started, the shamans have their kind of forums and groups and on Facebook and on other media and Kakao and different media. So they started discussing that it's doing bad for business. And so they are very well versed in the television depiction of themselves. That's why it became interesting. It's part of my ethnography, basically. And then the last chapter, because we're coming to the end of our talk, is about shamans online. So how shamans they use the internet to promote themselves. And we have several international shamans that it's not in the book so much, but now it's in my new book, the people that work in other countries. So that's, for example, a shaman, Mudang Ia Park. She was an apprentice of Kim Kong-hwa, that famous Manchin that died 3 years ago. So she's a real shaman, like the biggest shaman in Korea initiated her. She moved to Germany, and now she has this website, and she does all kind of mystical dance retreats and things like that. And she calls herself Mudang, and that's her website. And you see that she said Hia Park is a Korean shaman, Mudang, who specializes in art of ritual dance. She really works as a Mudang and as a kind of new age spiritual mediator. So it's very interesting. But this is a website of Sok Young-uk, the shaman that you've seen in the ritual that I described in the first chapter. So she has had this website since the 1990s. It's very early for a woman in her, now she's 60-something, but she was 50-something when she started having her own homepage. And not even lawyers in Korea had homepages at the time. So the Mudang, they picked it up very quickly in the 90s, that this is a very good place to put information. And she changes the website every now and then. So I have a chapter about the website, but actually it's kind of old stuff because now most of them move to social networks. So some of these websites are not that active as they used to be in 2010 when I started doing this research, but they're still on and they put videos, and when they have a big ritual, they have announcements, they have members that get the notification. So they use this platform, but this is not shamanic, right? What is all these statues here? They're shamanic statues, these Buddhas, right? But her spiritual mother became Buddhist when she was very old. When she passed away, she put next to her home outside Seoul. It's in Yangju. It's like probably 20 minutes ride from Kupapal train station. So it's maybe without traffic, it could be half an hour from Seoul, but with traffic, it's not very far. She bought a house there. She used to be in Seoul. She bought a house. She made a shrine. She rents room for other shamans that don't own a shrine outside Seoul. And she made a whole field of these Buddha statues in honor of her teacher. And also she's becoming more and more Buddhist now that she's getting older and she performs less. But she held a ritual last month for General Che Yang, the general she worships, and it was a big ritual. So this is internet promotion is very important. In my new book, I write more about social groups, like not official websites, things that change faster. Twitter, a lot of Facebook. Shamans use Facebook now more than other. Okay, so we come to the conclusion. From ritual to the World Wide Web and back. It started with the World Wide Web. We don't use that much, right? The www, but they started. The shamans started using the World Wide Web in the 90s. So it's very interesting for me to observe. And back to ritual, because most shamans have not become online shamans. They always want to make the ritual. So even if they broadcast it live to the client that is in another country, maybe, just paying for the ritual, and it will be on Zoom sometime, but they will perform the ritual for the spirits. So the spirits do want the fruit and the food and the pig and everything to be there. So it goes online, but it goes back to ritual. And they haven't given up the ritual. So that's one of the things that I talk about. I think we leave it open. Like every chapter has different conclusion, and it's basically in the title. Like the one about films talk about changes from the 70s. The one about television talks about the content. And here you can see the beautiful room in the Yang Johnson Shrine, one of the rooms in the museum, in his museum. But you can see there's food and offerings and money. Because when shamans come there, it's a museum. They put money near the painting because some of them worship these entities that are in the ancient paintings. And these paintings are on paper. They're not on polyester because that's a museum. So it has to have the old things there. I think we'll end here, right?